I never expected my family to betray me, but standing in that mahogany panel boardroom, watching Uncle James's face turn purple with rage, I realized blood isn't always thicker than water. "You have no right to be here, Alexandra," Uncle James spat, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. "Security, escort my niece out immediately." The two security guards hesitated, looking uncomfortable. They'd known me since I was a little girl running through these same halls. Before they could move, I held up my hand. "Actually, as a major shareholder of Blackwell Enterprises, I have every right to attend this meeting." I kept my voice steady, despite the hammering of my heart against my ribs, especially when the topic concerns the missing $4.7 million from our company accounts. Let me back up. My name is Alexandra Blackwell, and until 3 months ago, I was the CFO of Blackwell Enterprises, the company my grandfather built from nothing into a $200 million construction and real estate development firm. When my father died unexpectedly last year, I stepped up to help run the family business alongside my uncle, who became CEO. What I discovered in those financial records kept me awake for weeks. Growing up in the Blackwell family meant understanding our legacy. My grandfather, Richard Blackwell, started with a single truck and a dream in 1965. By the time I was born, Blackwell Enterprises had built half the skyline of our city. My earliest memories are of sitting on my father's knee in his office, helping him review blueprints. "Remember, Alex," my father would say, his voice gentle but firm. "This company isn't just about buildings. It's about trust. People trust us with their dreams." I took those words to heart. After getting my MBA, I joined the company, working my way through every department. No special treatment, that was my father's rule. "You'll earn respect by knowing this business inside and out," he insisted. And I did. By 30, I was the company's youngest CFO, working alongside my father, who had taken over as CEO after Grandpa's retirement. We made a good team. Dad was the visionary, beloved by clients and employees alike. I was the pragmatic one, watching the numbers, ensuring our growth remained sustainable. Then came the accident. A routine inspection at one of our construction sites, something Dad insisted on doing personally every month. The scaffolding collapse was ruled an accident, but it left Blackwell Enterprises without its heart and soul. At the funeral, Uncle James put his arm around my shoulders. "Don't worry, Alex. We'll get through this together." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my father's brother, my godfather, the man who taught me to ride a bike and brought me ice cream when I had my tonsils removed. I trusted him completely. 2 weeks after the funeral, the board appointed Uncle James as CEO. It made sense. He'd been COO for years, working alongside my father. I remained as CFO, grateful for the continuity during such a difficult time. The first few months were a blur of grief and work. I threw myself into the company, determined to honor my father's legacy. Uncle James seemed to do the same, working late, taking meetings with new clients, expanding our operations. It was during the quarterly financial review that I first noticed something odd. A series of payments to a company I'd never heard of, Oceanic Consulting Group. 5 transfers over 3 months, totaling $4.7 million. "What's Oceanic Consulting?" I asked during our executive meeting. Uncle James barely looked up from his tablet. "New consultants. They're helping us expand into the Asian market." "I don't remember approving that expenditure," I said. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The board approved it in executive session. You were at your mother's that week, remember? We didn't want to bother you with paperwork while you were caring for her." It sounded reasonable. Mom had taken Dad's death hard, and I had spent a week at her house, making sure she ate and took her medication. Still, something felt off. Later that day, I asked Diane, our corporate secretary, for the minutes from that executive session. "What executive session?" she asked, confusion wrinkling her brow. That night, I stayed late, digging through financial records. Oceanic Consulting Group had been incorporated just 3 months ago. Its registered address was a virtual office in the Cayman Islands. Its sole director was listed as JB Holdings. JB Holdings, James Blackwell Holdings. My uncle was embezzling from our family company. I spent the next week gathering evidence, carefully documenting every irregular transaction. There were more than just the payments to Oceanic. Project budgets with inflated materials costs. Subcontractors that existed only on paper, properties purchased at suspicious discounts, then resold to shell companies at massive markups. In total, nearly $12 million had been siphoned from Blackwell Enterprises in the 9 months since my father's death. The night before I planned to take my findings to the board, I received a call from Patricia Winters, the board's chairperson and my father's oldest friend. "Alexandra, I need to see you in my office tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. It's urgent." Her tone sent a chill down my spine. "What's this about, Patty?" A pause. "It's better we discuss it in person." I arrived the next morning to find not just Patricia, but the entire executive committee waiting. Uncle James sat at Patricia's right hand, his expression grave but with a glint of something that looked uncomfortably like triumph in his eyes. "Alexandra," Patricia began, her voice formal in a way it had never been before. "Serious allegations have been brought to the board's attention concerning financial irregularities under your supervision as CFO." I felt like I'd been punched. "What?" She slid a folder across the table. "These documents show systematic mismanagement of company funds, possibly rising to the level of embezzlement." My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside were doctored versions of the very transactions I'd been investigating, but altered to make it appear I was the one responsible. "This is impossible," I said, looking up at the grim faces around the table. "These records have been falsified." "We've had 2 independent auditors review them," said Martin Green, another board member. "The evidence is quite compelling, Alexandra." I looked at my uncle, who was watching me with an expression of sad disappointment so perfect it must have been rehearsed. "James is behind this," I said flatly. "He's been stealing from the company for months. I have proof." "Alex," Uncle James interrupted softly, "I know you're under a lot of stress since Robert's passing. We all are. But this, accusing me to deflect from your own actions, it's beneath you." Given the seriousness of these allegations, Patricia continued, "the board has voted to suspend you from your duties pending a full investigation. We'll need your company credentials and devices before you leave today." I looked around the table at these people who had known me my entire life. People who had watched me grow up, who had attended my college graduation, who had mourned with me at my father's funeral. And not one of them was willing to consider that I might be innocent. Except I noticed my father's old friend Gerald Thompson, who sat silently at the end of the table, his brow furrowed in thought. I stood dignity the only thing I had left. "You're making a terrible mistake, and you'll regret it." As I walked out, leaving my company laptop and badge behind, Uncle James caught up with me at the elevator. "Alex, wait." I turned, hope flaring briefly that perhaps this was all a misunderstanding. Instead, he leaned in close. "You should have stayed focused on the numbers and left the big decisions to me. Your father always knew you weren't cut out for real leadership." The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside, my mind reeling from his words. "Enjoy your early retirement," he called as the doors closed between us. The next 3 months were the hardest of my life. The investigation dragged on, carefully managed by my uncle to keep me away from the company. The board froze my shares, preventing me from voting or selling them. My professional reputation was in tatters. No one wanted to hire a CFO accused of embezzlement. But I wasn't idle. I still had friends within Blackwell Enterprises, people loyal to my father and suspicious of how quickly James had turned against me. Through them, I continued gathering evidence, building my case piece by painstaking piece. I also reached out to Gerald Thompson, the one board member who hadn't seemed convinced of my guilt. We met at his fishing cabin, well away from prying eyes. "I always thought something wasn't right about your father's accident," Gerald said as we sat on his deck, watching the sunset over the lake. The safety protocols at that site were state-of-the-art. Robert personally oversaw their installation. A chill ran through me. "You think it wasn't an accident?" Gerald sighed heavily. "I don't know, Alex. But I do know your uncle started making moves to consolidate power almost immediately afterward. Too quickly, like he was working from a playbook." "Help me, Gerald," I said. "Help me get back into that boardroom." That's how I found myself standing before the Blackwell Enterprises board 3 months after my suspension, uninvited but undeterred, with a flash drive of evidence in my hand and Gerald Thompson at my side. The quarterly shareholders meeting is a matter of public record. Gerald had reminded the security guards who tried to stop me. Maz Blackwell remains a major shareholder, regardless of her employment status. Now, facing down my uncle's rage and the board's shock, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I have proof, I said, holding up the flash drive, that not only clears my name but shows exactly where that missing $4.7 million went, and the other $7.3 million that's disappeared since then. Uncle James laughed, but I could see the fear behind his eyes. This is absurd. The board has already seen the evidence against you. They've seen what you wanted them to see, I countered. Forged documents, manipulated records. But what they haven't seen is this. I nodded to Gerald, who connected the flash drive to the projection system. On the screen appeared banking records, incorporation documents, property transfers, all meticulously organized and annotated. Oceanic Consulting Group, I began, is owned by JB Holdings, which in turn is owned by James Blackwell. That $4.7 million was transferred directly into my uncle's personal accounts. The boardroom erupted in chaos. Uncle James shouted over the din, his face contorted with rage. This is slander. She fabricated all of this. She's trying to save herself by destroying me. Patricia Winters rapped her gavel sharply. Order. We will have order. When the room quieted, she turned to me. Alexandra, these are serious accusations. How can we verify this information? I smiled for the first time in months. I anticipated that question. That's why I took the liberty of inviting representatives from Deloitte's Forensic Accounting Division to today's meeting. They're waiting outside with a court order authorizing them to access Blackwell's financial systems. Uncle James lunged across the table toward me, but security, the same guards who had hesitated to remove me earlier, quickly restrained him. You'll regret this, he hissed, echoing my words from 3 months ago. I don't think I will, I replied calmly. The next 4 hours were tense as the forensic accountants worked, the board members waited, and Uncle James sat fuming under the watchful eye of security. I knew what they would find, not just evidence of embezzlement, but something even more damning. When the lead accountant returned, her expression was grave. We've confirmed Ms. Blackwell's allegations. The funds were indeed transferred to entities controlled by Mr. James Blackwell. A collective gasp went through the room. Furthermore, she continued, we found evidence that Mr. Blackwell has been systematically falsifying safety inspection reports at multiple construction sites, including the one where Robert Blackwell died last year. The room went completely silent. I felt a cold numbness spread through me as the implication became clear. Patricia's voice shook as she asked, Are you saying? I'm saying there's enough evidence here to warrant a criminal investigation into both financial crimes and possible negligent homicide, the accountant confirmed. Uncle James suddenly bolted for the door, shoving aside a security guard. He might have made it too, if not for the 2 police detectives who had just arrived, alerted by the forensic accounting team as soon as they uncovered evidence of criminal activity. As they led my uncle away in handcuffs, he locked eyes with me one last time. The hatred there would have scared me once. Now I just felt pity. The board needs to convene an emergency session, Patricia announced, her voice steadier now. Alexandra, would you give us the room? I nodded and stepped outside, emotionally exhausted but vindicated. Gerald joined me in the hallway. Your father would be proud, he said, squeezing my shoulder. You fought for the truth, just like he always did. An hour later, Patricia emerged from the boardroom. The board has voted unanimously to reinstate you, Alexandra, not as CFO, but as acting CEO, effective immediately. We have a lot of damage to repair, both to the company and to your reputation. We're deeply sorry for failing you. I thought about declining. After everything that had happened, part of me wanted nothing more to do with Blackwell Enterprises. But then I remembered all the employees who depended on the company, all the projects my father had been passionate about, the legacy my grandfather had built. I accept, I said finally, on one condition. Name it. We established the Robert Blackwell Memorial Fund for Construction Safety, funded by recovering every penny my uncle stole. Patricia smiled, tears in her eyes. Consider it done. The next few months weren't easy. The company's reputation took a hit when the scandal became public. Several projects had to be delayed while we conducted proper safety reviews. The legal proceedings against my uncle revealed even more corruption than I had uncovered. But we survived. More than that, we emerged stronger, more transparent, more committed to the values my father and grandfather had instilled in the company from the beginning. A year after that dramatic boardroom confrontation, I stood on the podium at the opening ceremony for Blackwell Plaza, the downtown revitalization project that had been my father's dream. As I cut the ribbon, I spotted my mother in the front row, smiling through her tears. "This building stands as a testament to the Blackwell legacy," I told the gathered crowd. "Not just of construction excellence, but of integrity, perseverance, and truth." Some tried to steal that legacy, but they discovered what I've always known, that a foundation built on lies will inevitably crumble. Later, walking through the completed building with Gerald, I paused at the memorial plaque honoring my father. "Do you ever regret it?" Gerald asked. "Coming back that day, facing down your uncle, taking on the company?" I thought about it, remembering the fear, the isolation, the sleepless nights. Then I thought about the employees whose jobs I'd saved, the safety measures now in place protecting our workers, the restored integrity of the company my family had built. Not for a second, I answered truthfully. My father always said that Blackwell Enterprises isn't just about buildings, it's about trust. Rebuilding that trust was worth everything it cost me. As we continued our tour, I greeted employees by name, listened to their ideas, shared in their pride at what we'd accomplished together. My uncle had been wrong about me, wrong about leadership. Real leadership isn't about power or control. It's about service, about standing up for what's right, especially when it's difficult. That night, I sat in my father's old office, my office now, looking out at the city skyline we had helped shape. On my desk sat a framed photo of 3 generations of Blackwells. My grandfather, my father, and me, standing before the company's first major project. "We did it, Dad," I whispered to the quiet room. "We saved the company. We protected your legacy." And somewhere deep inside, I felt his approval, his pride, his love, stronger than betrayal, more enduring than grief, the true inheritance he had left me.